Here we are. Welcome to the 10th Salon of the Maternal Gift Economy Breaking Through series, hosted by the International Feminists for the Gift Economy and Genevieve Vaughan, who's with us today. I'm Letitia Layson, your moderator. We're delighted to have Elena Skoko and Charito Basa with us today. Both guest speakers will speak, followed by a Q&A. The chat box will remain open during the talks so that you can add your comments, but you can always close that down as well if it's distracting. We're going to be together for a few hours, so remember to take care of yourself. Drink water, get up and stretch if you need to. And another icon at the bottom of your screen says Q&A. That's where you can enter your questions. And it would be helpful if you make sure that you put the speaker's name in there. And Jen will be with us at the end if you also have a question for Jen. The salon today is being recorded and will be available on our website, the maternalgifteconomymovement.org. So without further ado, let's begin. Our first speaker is Elena Skoko, who's calling in from Croatia. Elena is a mother, activist, singer, multidisciplinary artist, and independent researcher. Since the birth of her daughter, Elena has dedicated herself to the topic of motherhood and childbirth, first with her book, Memoirs of a Singing Birth, where she describes her experience, later on with singing birth workshops and the advocacy for respectful maternity care. She promoted the Italian campaign, hashtag Basta,
Basta tacere, break the silence.
Basta tacere, on obstetric violence, lobbied at the Italian Parliament and founded the initiative Obstetric Violence Observatory in Italy with the aim to collect and disseminate data on the abuse and disrespect in childbirth. She's a member of numerous research networks, including the International Feminists for the Gift Economy. Elena met Genevieve Vaughan and the maternal gift economy theory while she was engaged in childbirth activism in Rome. Since then, the theory helped her make sense of both the work of motherhood as well as activism, discovering their own logic, values, and outcomes. The new self-awareness helped her and her colleagues advance their actions in their own right, finding the place among politics, professionalization, and the market. Welcome, Elena.
Thank you, Letitia, for your introduction. Welcome, everyone. I'm happy to be with you today. And I want to talk, I'm happy to talk about my encounter with the maternal gift economy and how it actually changed my perspective towards motherhood as well as activism. Very often when you become a mother, you don't have a theory about motherhood. You just start doing it, and later on you maybe have the need or to actually reflect upon what you're doing. So this is the same with activism. You do the activism because you feel the need to raise awareness of some issues, and then you realize what you're doing. And in both issues, maternal gift economy gave me the words to explain to myself and other people what I was doing. My story starts with my pregnancy. I was an artist, independent multimedia and singer. And I never thought what I was going into when I actually accepted motherhood. As probably most of women, you just jump into it and you discover it during the way. So when I was pregnant, I realized I didn't know anything about it, anything about childbirth. I didn't know the process. I didn't know how it happens. And even though I was really, educated, I had to start my own education and realize that I have choices to make in order to have a nice experience of birth. So I was also lucky because I met a wonderful midwife, Ibu Robin Lim, in Bali. I was living at the time with my partner in Bali. And she opened the door to me, to this world of childbirth, of motherhood, and of the gift economy. I think it is the most generous person I know, really. And she was a midwife. She's a midwife. She founded a birth center and a foundation in Bali that is called Bumi Sehat. And she is giving maternity care for free to all the people that need it, to all women that come to the birth center. Who can do the donation is free to do it of any amount, and who cannot actually pay for the care, there is no problem. So generally, foreigners do generous donations, and local mothers receive this free care. This was a system that I didn't know about. I was used to organize maternity care in healthcare systems. So in places where maternity care is free, but there was no option of gentle birth, and that was what Ibu Robin Lim was offering: gentle birth, respectful childbirth, a competent and loving care. So when I first met her, I was 6 months pregnant. And when I arrived at the birth center, I was greeted by a hug. And Ibu Robin told me, "I love you." That was the first thing she told me. It was really emotional, especially when you're pregnant. If you've been through the experience, but otherwise, I mean, it's really, you're in a pink bubble and you're so vulnerable. And I realized at that moment that this is what I needed: a loving care, a competent, trustworthy person that will take care of me, and at the same time letting me free to be myself, to do this demanding job of childbirth at my own terms. So she really guided me through the process in an unconditional way. She's also an amazing writer and a poetress and an artist. So she was really sensitive to all my needs, and she understood. She understood what I needed. She was there when I needed her, and she wasn't there when I could do it by myself. So this was my first encounter with the maternal gift economy within maternity care. And this allowed me to have a respectful birth. Not only it was respectful, it was really romantic, and I could say ecstatic. It was a pleasurable experience. And even though there were challenges, there was pain, I could go through it knowing and trusting the persons who were around me. And so I had a water birth, and Ibu Robin would collect the frangipani flowers for me and put it in the water. So there were some little things, that makes you feel not only safe and secure, out of risk in that sense, but also makes you perceive the beauty of the process and the beauty of love that is part of the care. So I had this singing birth. I could sing during childbirth, and this really helped me in all the process. And my midwife sang as well, and my partner sang. We were all singing during labor and childbirth. And later on, I wrote a book about my experience and all the care I received, all the choices that I made, and all the techniques, artistic techniques that I used in childbirth. Actually, I was asked by my friends to share all the knowledge and the experiences, because at that time it was quite uncommon. So I wrote a book and published it in English and in Italian, and started circulating this book, and started actually the storytelling about my experience. And while I was doing this, I received a lot of feedback. When you start sharing a story, you get the story, not the story back. It's not one-to-one. It's actually when you start sharing a story, everybody else feels this feels to share their own stories, and it is a beautiful process. It's like filling a box and filling a bowl of stories that become common, that belong to everybody who is inside, and through storytelling and through our personal stories, we shared our experiences. So what I've noticed was that many stories were traumatic, and I couldn't understand why. So I started researching. Every time that I would hear a story about a traumatic birth, I would go around and search into the literature, into the science, and to understand what was happening. So this actually started my researching journey into all things motherhood, and especially childbirth. To the point that I started doing research also on a scientific level, and meeting the network of activists. So when you start researching, you start, of course, to find other people who are similar to you and who have similar interests in it. And we all shared our information. We all shared our interest, and then our urge to do something, because I was receiving all those stories, and I felt in a way responsible of, I couldn't just do nothing about it. It was disturbing. Childbirth should be a beautiful moment for mother, for the baby, for the family, and it wasn't. It wasn't because of the care women were receiving, and lately this respectful care we learned was called obstetrical violence. So it is a violence that is happening during childbirth, mainly in the facilities, and with a disrespectful care that women and babies receive. So there is a whole really body of research and activism around obstetric violence that started in the Latin America with indigenous mothers and feminists who actually draw attention to this issue. That is a gender violence issue that happens to women during childbirth. So during this journey within motherhood, childbirth, and activism, I encountered the maternal gift economy, which was really a revelation, honestly. I was struggling to make sense out of motherhood. I would doing a lot of work. I was at the time a stay-at-home mother. I dedicated myself to my daughter, also because I was a foreigner, and I was an artist, so it's not really a steady job with steady income. And I realized that when you become a mother, you become an invisible artist. If women are invisible as artists, artists who embrace motherhood have much more struggle, so they are completely non-existent. Though we try to self-motivate, and so we have a niche of motherly art, but it's really a small thing. We are really underground. So I realized that, and that was a shock. I was realizing that I was doing a lot of work, but nobody seems to see it. And I was doing, I was sharing my stories, and then my research with other mothers, and that also was taking a lot of time, because as you can imagine, research takes time and effort and energy, and everything was work, but it wasn't not a job. So I didn't make sense out of it. I didn't have really the words to explain to my partner, to my family, to everybody around, who would say, well, you do nothing, you're stay at home with your baby. And when I met Genevieve Vaughan, and when I started researching and reading her books, I was really thirsty and hungry. So I read them all. It finally made sense, and I had words to answer all the things that people would ask me, and I had to kind of explain what I was doing and justify myself, both as a stay-at-home mother as well as activist. Because all the work of the activism that I started doing with my colleagues that I met on the way, and especially with Alessandra Battisti, who is my dear friend and a lawyer, and Michela Charito, who is president of an association, La Goccia Magica, I work with. We started, a power trio sharing experiences. Alessandra was, expert in law. Michela was expert in peer-to-peer help, so when mothers help mothers, and especially during breastfeeding, if mothers have some problems in breastfeeding, they can call the association, and somebody will answer or go there and start and help in solving the problem. And so peer-to-peer mothers do that without charge. So it's a free help. It is a service because they are trained to do that, and they do it, but they do it in a different way than professionals. There is a big difference. And in our conversations, we realize how much the maternal gift economy was helping us to understand the importance of our work, even though that work is not paid. The work of activism, of advocacy, that included lobbying at the parliament, going to the meetings with important persons, doing research and publishing, and it was all for free. And the peer-to-peer moms also, they were struggling to understand the difference, that what they're doing. Sometimes they would feel like it would be better to be a professional consultant for breastfeeding, but then they would start do this job, and they would realize the difference between being, in a gift economy or being in a paid economy. So the relationship with the mother would change, and the empowerment would not happen. So what happens when the mom helps another mom? It makes the mother who needed help empowered without borders. She feels valued. She feels that she can make it. She gets all the help without limitation. There is no hierarchy. There is no power relationship. So nobody's above, and nobody's teaching her a lesson, and she doesn't feel like she's a failure. She doesn't feel like she's incompetent. She feels, on the other side, she feels that she can do it. Somebody's here because she needed help, but it doesn't mean she wasn't able, to overcome whatever was the struggle. And many times, whereas most of the times, she didn't really have problems with breastfeeding. She had problems with the care she received before, and the repercussions of the disrespectful care actually turned on her early motherhood and the infancy of the baby. She couldn't really have a nice breastfeeding, though she wanted, of course, women who wanted to breastfeed. So the problem was not breastfeeding. The problem was inadequate maternity care. That later on we called obstetric violence, because that was the name the mothers gave to the issue, and that was also a law term in the international law. So what we did, we started. Okay, I'm trying to share my screen with you. I hope you can see it. Okay. So we started doing activism through campaigns. This is the so-called Break the Silence campaign. Women were invited to share their stories on a piece of paper and make a photo of it. And this happened in 2016. When we received in 15 days over 1,000 of stories of women who were describing their experiences, their traumatic experiences in the hospitals, and we realized the phenomenon was much wider than we thought. It really shocked us. We were around 15 mothers behind the screen, trying to manage this huge outpour of stories. And the story calls for a story. It's really, there is a gift economy in storytelling as well. So we were overwhelmed, and we were doing it in a special mode that was in a loving and caring mode. We welcomed everybody. We were nice and kind, and we were respectful, and women were so thankful. We couldn't do much about, to help them in their stories and in the outcomes of this issue, but they were really happy that we gave them the possibility to share their stories, and that we were listening. So we really experienced this campaign in a strong and humane sense. Really, it hit us a lot, and we were realizing how much it's important, the work we were doing for other women. And there was gratitude, but also very strong work and teamwork and among mothers. So it was really, really something that taught us a lot about the maternal gift economy and how powerful it is. Later on, we started collecting data, and we commissioned a survey to the major national agency, a survey agency. The survey was financed by mothers, so the Ministry of Health did not want to provide data on the phenomenon because we were soliciting, but we had no answer. So we had to pay it for ourselves, and we asked the help of mothers, and the mothers responded, and they said, well, money will not stop us. Money will not be the issue. This is so important. So there was the association La Goccia Magica and Ciao Lapo who actually put the money in, and we realized this survey, and you could see the data. So 21% of women answered that they experienced obstetric violence, which translates in 1 million women in 14 years in Italy. It's a shocking data. It's only a snapshot of the real phenomenon, but we thought it would be enough to spark an interest from the side of the Ministry of Health. But everybody was outraged and nobody wanted to really take responsibility. So the struggle continued, and it continues still now. But the data are here, and these are the first national data on the phenomenon, and one of the first research in the world about it in this sense. So we were asking women about their rights, their dignity, their integrity, their autonomy. How did they feel? So it wasn't about what was the clinical aspects of the care. It was about how did they feel, and they really appreciate it. And it started a conversation, a public discourse on the obstetric violence, actually, in Italy. So we reached 24 million people. It's 1/3 of the population, and the discourse is now out, and everybody is talking about it. And we still receive from 2017. This is still actual, and we still receive requests for interviews and in-depth conversations. So these are us at the parliament doing lobbying. These are all my colleagues, and this was during the campaign that really moved everybody, and we managed to enter into the parliament and actually do pressure work. Okay, so we founded the Obstetric Violence Observatory in order to continue collecting data. And we are in the network of the Interovo, it's called, of other obstetric violence observatories. And all of them are actually done in the same way, that is in maternal gift economy. So everybody's doing that for free, knowing how important this work is, and it is having a lot of impact, both on the public as well as on the institutions. Things are changing. It's different in every country, and institutions in some countries are responding much better than in Italy. But the change is coming, and it is change that was done by mothers in the gift economy. This is what I had to, say, just to start the conversation about what I do.
Thank you, Elena. Does that complete your talk for now? That was very beautiful. Yes. Reaching 24 million people, that is amazing. May it be so that the entire world has an awakening to this very needed support of mothers, and by way of the gift economy, even it just enters into the bridge of what we're trying to make visible. So thank you so much for doing that. And from this place of birthing children and advocacy for the individual mother, we now have Charito Basa with us, and she's going to be talking about transnational mothering and sisters and daughters. So it brings it to another level of how the maternal gift economy actually lives at a global level that we don't really see as a gift. It also is can be used as extractive, but she wants to highlight some of the gifts that this brings. So Charito Basa is a Filipino migrant activist from the Philippines who went to Rome in November 1986 to work as a domestic helper, but instead found work at ISIS International, an organization founded to foster communication and networking among women's movements at the global level. Through her work there, she became interested and got deeply involved in issues related to Filipino migrant workers in Italy. She is the moving spirit of Filipino Women's Council she initiated in May 1991, an organization of Filipino women migrants in Italy whose aim is to develop them as empowered women who understand their rights as women of color, as workers and migrants, and will pursue the realization of these rights. As a resource person for many Italian and international organizations, Charito helped them to manage and coordinate development projects focused on food security, train women, and conduct research. In recognition of her advocacy and voluntary contributions to the society, she was conferred the Order of Merit of the Italian Republic, Cavaliere della Repubblica, by ex-Italian President Carlos Campini in 2002, which is the highest order of recognition in the country and the first awarded to a non-Italian. Charito has published and co-authored various books and articles with special focus on realities of Filipino women in Italy. She passionately continues to do voluntary work and giving her gifts as an intercultural mediator, counselor, mentor, trainer, and much more. The Filipino community in Italy, across the country and Middle East, where she actively collaborates they fondly address her as the ate or tita. Welcome, Charito. Charito is calling in from Italy.
Thank you very much, Leticia. Good afternoon, good morning, good night, good evening to everyone, wherever you are. Yes, and I want to thank you for having me here. So I would have the chance to continue to, seek on where the position of women, the transnational mothers and sisters and dutiful daughters are within the maternal gift economy, which I did not actually know. I thought they were all, we are diaspora philanthropists, we give back, whatever, no? But it's all in all maternal gift economy, because majority of the women migrants in Italy are, well, the Filipino migrants in Italy are women. So I would like to give, because this is a different thing, this is not a lecture, I'm sorry, but this is just, to show everyone the snapshots on the data of migration at the macro and micro level. So my first PowerPoint presentation, well, my first page of the presentation would be flashed. Is it on? I would like to give a snapshot on how many migrants there are and how much money are involved in it. So sorry, let me just open my thing. There are 272 million migrant workers or migrants at a global level. And it's worth to note that 42% of this were women. This was the data I got from the UNDESA, which is the UN Development Economic, I forgot, UNDESA, we call it. So 48, almost 50% are women. And We also have to take note that 70% of all the international migrants were of working age, meaning they are productive and they are most probably employed. So between 20 and 64 years old. My next slide is on where these 272 million migrants are. So actually, people know, a lot of people know and think that the migrants are all in North America or in the United States or in London. But actually, the biggest number of migrant workers are in Asia. And the second biggest receiving continent is Europe, of course. And so you can see from the rest here, Africa has more due to internal migration within African regions, and Latin America, and of course also in Oceania, where there are Filipinos have arrived. My next PowerPoint presentation is a clearer view of the total number of international migrants by region and by sex. The orange color is the male counterpart, and the green one is the female. So the biggest number of migrant women are actually living in Europe, 78 million total migrant women, and there are, like, I can't see it very well, 52.3% are women. I think I can jump in. Sorry, I'm actually shaking. My next slide is, where are the Filipinos? There are no official data, actually, and the Philippine government estimates that there are 10 million. That was when I left, and still today they say it's still 10 million Filipinos in 200 countries. But I just wanted to show you where the majority are. Majority are in the United States, of course, there are 2 million. In Canada also, 629. But let's go to the Middle Eastern region, Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. These two countries actually host a lot of women migrants from the Filipino origin, and many of them are domestic workers, caregivers, nurses, medical workers. So our next slide is the money issue. My data is culled from the World Bank, and it says that in 2019, there was $715 billion worth of remittances of the global migrants. $715 billion in 2019. They have also estimated that there will be a decrease by 14% in 2021 due to COVID this year. And last year, it was already lower by $110 billion. I don't have to explain the reasons why. I'm sure everyone knows. The biggest, the top recipient countries of the remittances, first place is always India. It received $83.1 billion. China had 68.4. Mexico has 38.5 billion. The Philippines used to be the third, now it's the fourth. But in 2019, it received 35.2 US dollars in remittances that represented 9.9% of its gross domestic product. Most of the money, most of the remittances are coming from, and still they come from the United States, 68.0 billion, United Arab and Saudi Arabia. The next slide shows how much, it's the same as the previous one, but this just shows that in 2019, remittances surpassed the FDI, which is the financial direct FDI, financial investments, financial development investments, and the ODA, which is the Overseas Development Assistance, it's supposed to be, you know, the contribution of rich countries for development in poor countries like, you know, like the Philippines and poor countries where migrants are coming from mostly. It has surpassed. So, Jen, I'm happy to tell you that remittance is the biggest money in circulation. It was the biggest money in circulation in 2019. So probably arms trade, which I was not able to find the official data, was among the first or the biggest money in circulation. And then remittance was the second. Now remittance is the first. And foreign direct investments have sunk down, and the ODA has maintained, you know, its promise to give some millions of dollars in developing countries. I would like to also briefly tackle the different types of remittances. Now I have changed the word remittances to gifts. First of all, I've spoken about remittances, and that's the monetary remittance. That's the money we send to our families, to our countries, you know. And the second one is the material gifts, actually. There is no calculation on this. My second photo shows the boxes that we call balikbayan boxes that we send to our families. Left behind in the Philippines. And these are all gifts. These are clothing, these are food items, canned goods, toys for kids, and so on and so forth. So that's a material gift. The third one is a collective remittance for development projects at community level. And this is also hard to calculate because in the Philippines, or Filipino migrants across the globe have formed groups or associations, especially in places like Italy. We have hometown associations, like the Filipino migrants coming from one town or one province or one region. They have joined together, and they have been sending, although sporadically, gifts through NGOs or through their families or through local governments to support community projects, especially in times of calamities and disasters. And all the Filipino across the globe do that. There's another form of social remittance, which I was like having difficulty in understanding. When When I looked at it, it says, social remittances are the ideas, behaviors, and identities that flow between countries as migrants are exposed to new ways of life, attitudes, and ideas. So I can't find any photo. There is nothing on that, probably because it has not been calculated also, and it's incalculable. But one of the examples of this, for example, one of the examples of this is when we go home, because this happens when we go home or when we talk to our family members via video calls or text messages or letters. When we teach them, when we tell them what we've learned, it could be also applied or done in the Philippines. I have a very funny story of this one, that the first time I went home to the Philippines in 1990, after I got married, we rented a house, and I did the cooking, and my husband was the one who washed the dishes. And the guests were my brothers and my nephews and nieces. And so after dinner, my brother said, "Hey, but why are you treating your husband like that? You should be the one to wash the dishes." And I said, "What? No, in Italy, they don't do that. Males can also cook, and sometimes they are even better cooks than women." So he didn't quite understand that. And the day after, we still continued arguing on that. And it has become, like a focus group discussion. I said, look, it's sharing of responsibilities within the household. So that's a social remittance and ideas on how to clean, because how the Italians clean their houses is like, oh, magnificent. The cleanest place is the bathroom and the toilets, and then the kitchen, and then everything. These ideas we have transferred to our family. So when we go home, our family members and even friends have learned from what we have acquired, the new behaviors and new identities that we have acquired in Italy. Now let's go to, I have to read some things here on why women migrate. So why women migrate, and I would like to, I have taken different paragraphs from different research works that we did and other works that were done by other institutions. And I know everyone would understand this. Women migrate to work abroad in response to gender-specific labor demand in countries of destination that reflects existing values, norms, stereotypes, and hierarchies based on gender. So, since the 1980s, and that's in the next slide, the global economy has undergone a series of changes that have led actually to the feminization of migration. First, the structural adjustment program in the global south has led to major cuts in social spending and the privatization of public services such as education and healthcare. And so neoliberal policies have been materializing in the global south in the form of higher poverty levels, social inequalities, unemployment, and informal economies. So when men in our countries have trouble as economic providers, women enter the workforce to support, obviously, their families. Global inequalities in wages are particularly visible. The simplest explanation is this: in the Philippines, the daily minimum wage, average daily minimum wage, is 4 euros. While in Italy, a domestic worker who works on a part-time basis earns 8 euros. Okay. The third, with the decline of the welfare state in the global north, there are a lot of changes in their traditional family-based model of care. I was always saying that we are here because the Italian women started to work in offices, no? They have joined the productive workforce. And paired with the aging of the population, this has caused disruption in the provision of care for children, elderly, the sick, and the people with disabilities. Of course, The most accessible option was to hire a domestic worker to provide the care services, who, and this is in our case, very own experience, who often is a migrant herself, who has left her own children under the care of another woman. So what do we call this process? This is what we call now the global care chain. Fourth, the world has been experiencing structural changes, including outshoring and outsourcing. This is in the production, manufacturing industries, where, for example, I think it is, no, it's not the Philippines, but when where cheap labor are based, cheap labor are actually given by women who come from the global south. The hiring of women are actually focused on garment industries, food processing, cigarettes, textiles, because women are ideal candidates for manufacturing jobs. And women are compliant, they are hardworking, they're docile. Women are seen as natural sewers, and women are a replaceable commodity. Fifth, in some countries like the Philippines and Sri Lanka, they have created special bureaus to proactively promote the migration of women. The Philippine government has signed more than 25 bilateral agreements on health services and human resource cooperation to export healthcare providers. I sourced this from the research of the Scalabrini Migration Center in the Philippines. Of course, we Filipinos know that the Philippines is the center of a large nursing education sector, and thus is an important supplier of nurses worldwide. This reminds me of when they started to migrate, actually. My aunt went to Germany as a nurse in the early 70s. Other relatives went and migrated to the United States and Canada even before the 80s. So yes, this fifth push factor actually is important also to take note. And of course, generally, women cannot bring their children with them, of course. These women give to children in the global north the love and the care they cannot give to their own children. Millions of children in the global south have been left behind by their mothers. For instance, in the Philippines, there was an estimate of 9 million children with one or both parents working overseas as a labor migrant. Then we will ask the question of, so how are these children doing? I will go into that later. So I would like to talk about the the Filipino women and our experiences in Italy in the next slide. And even if from the perspective of the home country, the Filipino community in Italy may appear but a drop of ocean in the overall emigration picture, Italy is one of the principal destinations of Filipino women in Europe. The Filipino migration to Italy is comprised primarily of women who are married with children and migrate as the main providers of the household. I think the first wave of our Filipino migration to Italy is in the mid-70s. Yet, another important segment of these migratory flows are young, single women who migrate as dutiful daughters and sisters of their households. I am one of them. I am the eldest of 8 children and I'm a woman, so I said, okay, I have to support my poor family and I had to migrate. That's why I decided to come to Italy to work as a domestic helper. But that didn't happen actually. And like many female migrants, we maintain strong commitment to our households. We frequently contribute to the daily, it's regularly actually, to the daily financial subsistence of the families, as well as the payment of other numerous expenses such as tuition fees for younger siblings. So my reason and main objective was the same for the majority of the Filipinas who migrated to Italy, actually. As you can see in the slide, it's a survival strategy and for some economic independence. But it's all about for the family. And of course, not only for the family, but savings for investments as well. Build a house, of course. I didn't have a house when I left the Philippines, but my sister built it because I helped her come to Italy and she said, I will build a house. I bought agricultural lands and many of the Filipino migrants in Italy, especially those coming from the northern part of the Philippines and the southern Luzon, they have bought agricultural lands as a form of their investments. So how many are we in Italy? We were 161,892 in 2018. I'm afraid the figure is not correct anymore, but there are less Filipino migrants in Italy. Not physically, but because some of them have lost their permits to stay. And if they lost their jobs, they lose, they're not part of the statistics anymore. So 57.1% are women and 42.9% are male. 82% are actually employed and 70% employed in domestic and care service works. Majority of the Filipino migrants in Italy are found in the region of Lombardy, Milan, and neighboring, provinces and big cities there. Lazio, the capital of which is Rome, is 28.2%, and Emilia-Romagna, which is actually a little bit down south. It's between Florence, if you could imagine, Tuscany and Milan. This source is from the Ministry of Labor. So this was official in 2018. I have no idea why they did not publish the updated ones yet. Employment here again, 70% are unqualified manual, domestic and care workers. There are also electricians, mechanics, but very little. 1% of the professionals. We have probably 2 or 3 lawyers and doctors who have graduated there, and mostly are children of Filipino couples children who were born here and studied here. 24% of employees in sales and other services, hotels and restaurants, majority of these are actually unemployed. Average salary was 800 for 48% of the employed Filipino migrants. How much we're sending? In 2017, there were 5,075,116 euros that originated from Italy. The Filipinos sent 439 million, or the 10.5% of this, This was the data in 2018 also. So the biggest remitters are the Romanians, and many of the Romanians are also women and are working in the domestic sector. They're women. The Bangladeshi ones are the second biggest remitters. Philippines, again here, third biggest remitter. Has always been the third in the past. I do not know last year and this year. That I will have to find out again later. My next slide is, where do we use our remittances? Food, household, and basic commodities, including appliances. That is the biggest, actually. That's where the money, biggest portion of our money goes. Education of children and immediate relatives. So we will find out, we're finding out that not only, the women are not only sending their children to schools or paying for the school fees and expenses, but also nieces, nephews, even grandchildren. A lot of money have been used to buy real properties and agricultural lands, and a lot of money spent on healthcare. Healthcare is not only, insurances or whatever, but it's, in the Philippines, it's not totally free, and many don't have access to healthcare. So you have to pay. Everything is paid for. Other money went to business investments, small stores, grocery stores, we call it, farming and backyard, tiny projects. Purchase of transportation like jeepneys or tricycles, which is very, very well used in the Philippines. A lot of Filipino women have also bought apartments for rent. So that's positive. And the last one, which we found out in 2012, and that's why I was asking, why so many money if the average salary, because the average amount of monthly remittances in our studies, which was commissioned to us by the United Nations Institute for Training and Research for the Advancement of Women, the average remittance monthly was between 350 to 400 a month. And so I did a calculation and I said, but that doesn't still reach 512 million, because that was how big it was in 2012. So the UN, United Nations supervisor called me and said, hey, Chato, can you explain to me why this is so big, 512 million? And so we found out because Filipinos have also borrowed and are continuing to borrow money from loan sharks, from banks, from financial institutions, and sending them to the Philippines in form of remittance, of course, because as you could see, if I buy a real property and I don't have money, I can, borrow money and send it to the Philippines so that because I can't wait anymore to save. So what many have done is that they borrowed money also to invest. So the remittances are also used to pay debts, or debts are paid here, so less remittances to the Philippines. I hope that's clear. You can ask questions anyway afterwards. Okay, let's go to the gift economy practices that I was saying. The migrants are philanthropists. No, this is the practice. Again, education is number one, but let me read something here, which I prepared. The principle of cooperation and solidarity interact as we migrant women actively seek to respond to a combination of social, economic, cultural issues in the Philippines. We have very little resources. No? But our contribution make a lot of difference to our own lives and to the lives of those who live in poverty. Based on several studies, including our very own studies and experiences, the hometown associations and other informal groups and Filipino organizations are active in migrant giving in the Philippines. So what you see here are actually just the significant activities, scholarships, fulfillment of infrastructural needs of on a local level, such as renovation of even public buildings and contributing to the construction of schools or the fences in schools. Supporting children and orphanages also have been happening in very sporadic ways, and financing emergency support projects is very, very common among the Filipinos across the globe, though not only in Italy. Maybe we give little, but in the United States they're more active and they have they give more, including contributing to medical assistance, and medical equipments are sent to the Philippines mostly by hometown associations and medical workers across the globe. The last bullet here is the continued support of Filipino migrants associations, especially women's associations. I nominate that not because I come from that that group, but it should be. But we have to consider that the most important areas of work, volunteer work we have done, have actually sieved, and we have helped. We have supported the Italian service systems because they cannot provide, and so we filter the problem. Sometimes we even solve the problem. Oftentimes, not sometimes. So the role of migrants and migrant women's organizations in the positive transformation and of social and economic situation of the migrants is a very, very big contribution that migrant organizations and migrant women's organizations are giving. I get very dramatic about this because in the end I said, oh, that's only volunteer work. Okay, I'll do it. But it has been 34 years that I'm doing that. And that's big, and that's very empowering. And we're very proud that we're doing it, not only for ourselves, but also, for our co-migrants. Where am I now? I forgot where I am. Sorry. I got so emotional. I also, well, the effects on international migration, is that the correct one? Yes, the effects of international migration. There are 4. I have to go very quickly on this. On the economic front of the sending country, women migration has contributed to the labor export has contributed to reducing unemployment and underemployment rates. Remittance obviously help countries fight inflation and pay foreign debts. So that's a big, big, big positive, impact of international migration of both women and men, of course. And remittances contribute to increase the GDP in some cases, like in the Philippines. It's not considered as a poor country anymore, not very poor country anymore. I do not know what is the level of where the Philippines is now. But with the billions of dollars it has received, of course, it's not considered by the as a very poor country. Remittance benefits migrants' households because it enhances the purchasing power, particularly for basic needs. In several cases, remittance and savings are used for income-generating investments. The gift economy in practice of what is also known as the Diaspora Philanthropy and the infusion of capital coming from the migrants, either spontaneously or through organized channels, promote the development of communities of origin. Definitely, the receiving countries benefit from international migration also because, among others, it helps address the demographic challenges such as aging of the population. This is very, very true within the Italian context. The presence of migrant communities also contributes to cultural enrichment of receiving societies. And where opportunities are granted, migrants can experience social mobility and also the employment of overqualified migrant workers for the job generally improves the quality of service, of course. Nurses are caregivers, teachers are babysitters, other professional women who have work experiences prior to migrating to Italy are now house managers, of course, the Filipina. In many receiving societies, migrants fill labor shortage gaps, which enable receiving societies to effectively respond for free. It's not the state, which enable receiving societies to effectively respond to the needs of the care of children, elderly, and the sick, as I have mentioned earlier. So what are the impacts on women migrants? Isolation, both physical isolation and isolation created by language barrier. That is a problem in Italy. The long-term separation of families, no? Mothers without their families, because not all are able to reunify with their families. Despite our efforts to change the policies, and I was once part of the commission at the Ministry of Social Welfare on the rights of migrants and their families. The law was passed, reunification is okay, blah, 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 but the requirements are so difficult. You have to have, a good income. You have to have decent housing where you could accommodate the families coming. So actually, majority of the migrant workers are still Filipino migrant workers, domestic and care workers are living with their employers because they cannot afford to pay apartments and make their families come. This has long-term deleterious effects on the health and well-being of women migrant workers and their children. For Filipino women in the care work, long hours of work, of course, 12 hours a day, coupled with the emotional nature of the work. I was saying before, they were nurses and they're actually, they were nurses and they're doing caregiving work. Of course, this is depressing, no? Emotional nature of work manifests in terms of both physical exhaustion and psychological harm. And migrant women also face financial, emotional, physical, and psychological costs of migration. When they return home, when we return home, actually, we face stigma. This is very, very, I was just reminded of when I went home and I saw my friends and I said, hey Chato, what are you doing? And I said, I work with ISIS International. What ISIS International is saying? All the Filipino women are domestic helpers. Of course, a lot of Filipino women are afraid to go home and they probably won't even go home because of lack of reintegration services. and employment opportunities in the Philippines. I will go to, I think I'm getting so long, to the cost of children and families. No? So problems observed among families of Filipino women migrants can be rooted to two situations. First, the physical separation with the family, and second, the reliance of families on remittances. Communication gap and the quality of communication is actually very bad and has been very bad. We have observed in our research works that often migrant mothers and their children do not share problems and difficulties and other concerns because they want the other to be free of worries. And oftentimes, of course, communication between parents and children is reduced to matters concerning finances and material things sent from abroad. Migration of the mother means losing at least one role model for the children, losing one provider of emotional care, the guidance, support, and encouragement, because she, the mother, supposed to be taking the nurturing role of the children in the traditional upbringing of the Filipino family, is away. Most of the issues that we have found in our works as not only organizers, but also counselors are the following. There are children dropping out of school, teenage pregnancies, early marriages, drug and alcohol abuse, because migrant children in the Philippines are easy prey for drug dealers or drug sellers because they have the money. We have encountered cases of violence and sexual abuse within the family. Incest, for example. And family breakups and alienation between husband and wife because their communication is also not very good. And they don't talk about emotions and issues concerning marriage and relationship because they talk about money and affairs concerning their children. Are you watching the children? Is he studying, etc., etc.? This has become a major problem of a number of spouses because of the physical distance, and it has become an accepted way of life. New families here, new families there, husband went to other, that has been a big problem already in the Philippines. And this is one of the causes of mothers leaving the country. Dependence on luxury lifestyle and families left behind. Majority of the migrants are unable to save for their long-term goals and end up spending many of the productive years away from their families because they cannot save. They have to send money all the time continuously, and so on and so forth. Supporting extended family has also been a problem. They have become dependent on the migrant women for all their needs, including hospitalization, birthdays, weddings, and other luxurious social celebrations. This is very famous in my province of origin, where birthdays and celebrations are so luxurious, and parents who are indebted here would borrow from financial institutions because their daughter is going to be celebrating her 18th birthday or getting married. And so these are happening. Consumerism and overindulgence of children. Children have become conscious of branded imported goods already. They want iPhone, which is actually dictated by how parents flooded them with material things, the gifts, to make for their absence. And therefore, their resources are actually drained. And so women continue to stay abroad. I think I'm in my last PowerPoint and I have gone really very long. No, this is not the last PowerPoint. But how do we address? Okay, this is our very own experience. We did research because we were subject of interviews and research, and the researchers and the universities and academics disappeared. So we did our own research to find out our own problems and identify our own solutions, possible solutions. So with all the problems that I have, the impact of international migration on women and children, we were able to address in some special projects, like maximizing the gains and minimizing the social cost of migration. This is on the financial education on management of better management of remittances, and also mobilizing migrants' resources through investments in agricultural activities in the Philippines, which is part of the financial education, but which has become, one of our major, they call it, investments, is that through our financial education, we have accumulated savings and we have invested a lot of savings through the agricultural through an agricultural cooperative in the Philippines. So that's addressing also, some problems. There are also issues on gender and violence, and so we were actually asked by the Philippine authorities, the Philippine embassy, to run a series of gender awareness and introduction to violence against women, because it's one of the issues that the Filipino women are also facing. We have also been doing the series of seminars on how to live in Italy. It's not actually, sort of integration, but social integration. Know the laws, know what your rights are and your responsibilities are. I have talked about the intercultural mediation on labor, health, and legal issues, policy, lobby, advocacy on rights and women's migrants and their families. This has been, one of our most beautiful experiences, because we have become resource persons, not only by our national government, the Italy, but also at the EU and UN levels. We have been part of the high-level consultation meetings before they make policies. So that's really very, very empowering. I think I have to skip this financial education sort of thing, but just to show you what we do. And this is an ongoing thing, except of course, now we cannot do it because of the COVID distancing and so on. And we still have to find out how to do it via Zoom, because this is a whole day affair. So we cannot do Zoom at a whole day affair. So that's still to be, we still have to work on that. The next is, okay, I think
we need to start closing your talk so we have room for questions.
Yes, this is it. This is my last page. This
Perfect.
is my last page, actually. So I was saying we also have received gifts because it's for own empowerment by way of taking role in initiating action-oriented projects. We have improved our understanding on the situation of women and migrant workers, and we were able to find better strategies on how to solve our issues. Research and analysis skills was also a very beautiful learning for us, and has become a powerful tool for influencing policies and advocacy in our works. And we have partners and at the local, national, EU and UN institutional levels, and we could negotiate with them in behalf of policies that are friendly to migrants and women especially. I think I will have to end here because I have gone too far. I am so sorry, but you can ask questions. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Charito. Maybe you can make your slides available and we can put them up with the recording so that people can run through your slides when they're reviewing your talk. Okay,
Okay,
that would be
yes.
great. Great, thank you so much. There was a lot there, and I know there's plenty more. You've been doing work for 34 years, so my goodness. But you have revealed the challenges of globalization, and Genevieve talks about the flow of gifts and the challenges that we have as we live in this extractive economy where money looks like it's gifts, but really underneath all of that, there really is this flow of the gifts besides the money, which is non-material, which you also did talk about. Mm-hmm. So it's very wonderful to have that. And also Elena brought to light this whole idea of the organic and physiological experience of the gifts of mothering itself. And you, Chato, brought that out in the way that there has been violence, really, in this global flow of movement of mothers so that they're mothering other children and their own children aren't getting mothered by their birth mothers. So that's quite the conundrum. So thank you both. And I'd like to open it up to questions now, if there are some. And if there are some comments, Genevieve, because this is where the theory comes in. What these two women have identified are systemic issues that the gifts of mothers and the maternal gift economy has such a hard time being seen because mothers really aren't even respected, as Elena pointed out, and honored, as Chato pointed out, because they are used as commodities to be moved around the globe. It's very challenging. I don't know if you want to say something, Jen, right now.
Yes, it is. It's really amazing, you know, the amount of work and care that go into the work of the migrant women in order to send that money back to their home countries. And also, it's interesting to see how the women who are giving birth in the global north are also being exploited in a way by the medical profession and by a patriarchal setup, and to liberate the women in one sense and the mothers liberate them in that sense, and also liberate the women who are trying to give their children a better life and having to give the children here also a better life that their own mothers here are not able to do because they're working in the exchange economy. They're working in the capitalist economy. So it's just all of it is sort of tangled together between the gifts and the exchange. And we need to really be able to untangle that so we can see how to put gift giving first and put the exchange part and money second or last. So that's all I have to say.
At this point, thank you so much, Jen. So I'm wondering if there are any questions, Liliana, and for those of you listening now, if you want to put if you have a question, you can put it in the Q&A.
I have a question for Elena. I put it in the chat because this question was sent to me. Question to Elena from Mary B. What is the role of, and it's written in the chat in case you want to look at it, Elena. What is the role of professionalization in the market in childbirth and childbirth studies?
Yeah, this is not really addressed issue. We take it for granted that we have to pay for healthcare But this is not traditional way. Women were assisted by other women during childbirth, the so-called lay midwives, or their mothers, or anybody who was actually having that role in the community, free of charge. And this allowed for everybody involved to be part of the community. They all felt as part of the community. Nobody was above, nobody was below. And with the introduction of healthcare systems, the modern healthcare systems, actually it started previously when midwifery was officialized by the church, and so only one midwife could provide care. All the rest of the women could not, and they would be punished. This created a distance from of the professional from the community and towards the birthing mother, actually dehumanizing in a way the mother who was assisted. So this professionalization brought in the power relations, and this is really an issue now. I mean, it's not only about Middle Ages or before healthcare. Even though the care in European countries, like in Italy, the maternity care is officially free of charge, but women pay the gynecologist most of the times, the majority of women. It creates this distance of healthcare workers from the community and from people. So they act in the hospitals in a different way as they would act in the community, even at the bar. There is this new relation, medical patient, even though a woman who is giving birth, she's not sick, but all the process of pregnancy and giving birth becomes a medicalized process in this system. And the care is done under a hierarchy and the relations of power, so that they disempower the woman, so she feels inadequate, she feels not able to give birth, and the whole culture of birth has changed. So women, they seek care, they want care, not only because this is a good thing to do, but because they feel inadequate to do anything. They feel that somebody else is giving birth for them, and this reflects also in the language. The baby is delivered. Now, I mean, the baby gives birth, first of all, to itself. So the baby has the capacity to be born. There is an agency of the baby who is doing the job. The mother is giving birth. The others are assisting. Nobody is delivering the baby. It's not a, parcel. And the mother is not a postman who's delivering something, the package, or even the package. Sometimes the package, has to be opened. So it's really, the professionalization has created this otherness. The mother is something, it's not a human being. And if we think we are modern and this has changed, I mean, this is really a shock when women go to the hospitals. They expect to be treated as humans, all levels of society, so it's really interclass issue. Lawyers go to give birth and they are treated like other women. They are spoken to in an offensive way. They are bossed, they are infantilized, and others take decisions on their bodies without their consent. So this is a common problem in both developing countries as well, and mainly in developed countries, because developed countries actually invented such a system. So they're exporting it as it is in developing countries, without addressing the issues. So it is very hard to raise awareness, to advocate, and say, well, look, let's, there has been some major changes on the way. We realized this system is disrespectful, and now we want to change. But once you have initiated such a way of delivering care, it's hard to go back. You educate people in being cold, because doctors and medical professionals, they feel that when they are cold, they are professionals, while women, they look for warm and loving care. So it's really, there is a separation that is within, it's really systemic, and it's the core of the system, and it really has to do with money and being paid.
Thank you, Elena. Judith, do you have a question for the panel or Jen?
Yes, Elena, I loved your comment that the mother's not a postman receiving a package that has to be opened. I have another question for Elena. I've heard of drumming with a birth, and drumming to help the rhythm of the contractions. And is the gift of singing during the birth a similar thing? Do you have special birthing songs? Or could you say more about the singing birth?
Thank you, Judith. Well, singing during birth, as well as rhythmical movement and rhythm producing, is part of really ancient traditions. So women have been using those expressive tools to ease the labor and birth, and it was banned. It was straightforward banned by the church in the 16th century, and women who were helping other women to give birth, they would use the so-called charms and invocations and songs that we suppose in Europe were part of the traditional way of dealing with childbirth and rituals, and they were forbidden. It was forbidden by the church, so they could not use it. After the church, the medical establishment also was not really keen on this quackery, and so it was considered to be lunatic. So right now we are still living in this fear of singing during birth, of moving sensually, because giving birth is a continuation of woman's sexuality, and you give birth as you would have an intimate intercourse, and you relax in the same way. What singing does, it really calms. It's really good to deal with fear and with breathing. So nobody has to tell you, push or breathe or something like that. You really inhale and exhale without thinking. And the less you think, the most pleasurable and smooth the labor and birth is. So singing really helps in getting in that state when you are relaxed and you are open to or your channels are open. It stimulates the nervus vagus. It's really also has physiological properties. So when the mouth and the articulatory apparatus is really connected to the cervix and to the vagina. So if you have this open, then also the channel is open. The cervix is more smooth, and you are, you know, in the mood. You're not contracted. You're not in fear, and so that's why singing is good. Of course, it's not mandatory. You don't have to sing to give birth. You can do so many nice things that you feel like beneficial to you. So many women prefer giving birth in silence, or in, you know, they moan and they move, and especially they choose their position of birth. So, you know, this is all, we are really constrained and, you know, silenced in this way, this aspect of our womanhood as well.
Thank you, Elena. Liliana, is there another question that you might have for the panel?
Yes, actually, I have two questions for Chato. And it says, wonderful work. Chato, thank you for all of your work. And the question is there a special status for temporary household workers in Italy as there is in Canada? Are the women immigrants, or are they tied to their employers in order to stay in the country? And then the second question is there any law project that will protect the Filipino women, since there are so many of them? Don't the Italians recognize the amount of Filipino women that are working for them? That's the question. Two questions.
Okay, I think I also have to, I think I saw, I'm not seeing anymore. Sorry, my eyes are actually strained. The question of Jen on what can we do, I will answer it later. But the first question is there a special status for temporary household workers in Italy as there is in Canada? The answer is no. Italy is not Canada. And the second question, are the women migrants, or are they tied up to their employers in order to stay in the country? Well, the Filipino migrants are so empowered. This will also answer the first line. So empowered, they know how to use their rights. You know, even if they are undocumented, they go to trade unions. And the second question also answers this one. Italy, the Italians adore the Filipino domestic workers. I think I have described it in my presentation. Of course, we're the best, or they're the best, you know, best caregivers, best babysitters, and they, of course, they are. So there are actually laws that protect the Filipino women in Italy. I did not talk about the problems with the law, no? It's about, you know, internal problems within the community or within the family. But the Filipino migrants in Italy, the women especially, they're very vocal. They know where to go, they know what to do. Of course, because of the services available, and also because, again here, thanks to migrant organizations across Italy, because we are informed, we disseminate information. Our research works, we've gone, visited them, we partner with them. So if they have questions, I can also answer to, you know, problems that exist in Sardinia, as far as Saudi Arabia. Information for us is very important, actually. And I think I have learned this through, you know, these 34 years of working, networking. I have come from ISIS International, of course. Thanks to Jen's, you know, study tours and all the things that I did, I have become vocal and things like this. But actually, the Filipino women are respected and are adored by the Italian migrants. And most of the time, if we have to intervene as intercultural mediators, we always win the cases. because if they can talk, then we can. There are trained intercultural mediators in Italy, and these were projects not done by us. We were participants, or we were the trainers. We have become the trainers for intercultural mediators, because we have to teach, Italian service workers on the culture of each country. I think Italy is now, it's like it's third world, fourth world, fifth world, but at times, but in policies like protection of women migrants, trafficking in women, family reunification, they have the best policies in Italy. So it's not like Canada. I know in Canada, it's very, very difficult. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Chato.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Judith, do you have any questions for us?
There have been several requests to talk about the relationship of all this to white supremacy, global capitalism, and patriarchy, and specifically medical patriarchy and colonization of women's bodies and birth. So what's the relationship of gifting and what the speakers talked about, and global capitalism and patriarchy?
Well, I will just say in 10 minutes, we wouldn't be able to cover a very in-depth analysis of that. But I'm wondering if perhaps, Jen, you might have some thoughts about that, or Elena and Chato both identified challenges and problems. I think that has to do with the fact that mothering and women are not seen in the light of, the character in which the maternal gift economy shows that that's the underlying value that really operates. It's the reason why we can exist in the world, is that relationship that we have and how all of the gifts flow. It's very complex, the way that all of these different systems are layered and intertwined. But I'm wondering if you might want to give a stab at it in the next few minutes. and we
Me or
yes, Jen. Yes, Jen, you first, because it is very complicated. It's very complicated. All of those layers.
Well, to simplify, I would say, that I believe that the exchange economy is parasitic on the gift economy. And so it takes all the gifts that we are trying to give and uses them to make profit. And so that is also operative at the level of birth and at the level of immigration. And the more gifts that the capitalist system can get, the more it flourishes. And in the process, it helps people also, the immigrants themselves, to make a little money that they can then send home as gifts. But we are all part of a big mechanism that isn't working in general. And so we need to find ways of changing that, not only because of the human suffering that it creates, but because of the environment is degrading around us. And we are not going to be able to do this for very much longer.
Elena or Chato, do you have some input that you might want to have to this big question? And just again to note that these salons are available, the recordings to review, because there is an interconnected systemic illness that we need to actually extract. We need to shift from this capitalist dominant value that is basically killing the planet. Jen points that out often, and diminishes women's power, which Chato and Elena have both pointed out, the way that our values have been oppressed. So do you have anything that you'd like to offer, Elena, in the closing for today?
Well, yes, this question is huge, and the words are big sounding words. And I know it's impossible to address all of them, but yes, there are those issues as well. You know, women are producers of social capital, so the patriarchy wants definitely to have control over women's bodies, and the medical institution, though it is a life-saving facility, when it is not life-saving, it becomes exploitative. You know, so sometimes there is an emergency, like in childbirth, you will have 85% of potentially physiological birth, and 15% when medical assistance will be beneficial. You know, but you have cesarean rate of 35% in Italy, so it's over the needed. You know, so there is an exploitative market of women's bodies, you know, because women do not realize that they are a commodity in a healthcare system. So it's not only about, you know, saving lives, it's also about you know, a health market. And it's hard to talk about it because, you know, care is something that we need, and it's very emotional. And when you need it, you're happy you have it, you know, but it could be improved, you know. And we don't understand why it isn't improved, but it is because of patriarchy. It is because of capital, and because of considering human beings as commodities and source of market exchange. So this is a cause of dehumanization. So as the indigenous peoples who were conquered by colonialists were dehumanized, you know, being considered inferior or even not human, so is actually happening to women's bodies. They enter this arena of, you know, not being considered fully human beings. So all the processes are justified. And so it definitely is. At the core, there is this non-acknowledgement of the global gift that we are participating in with the earth. I mean, during the Enlightenment, historically, during the 18th century, it was said that we are something different from the earth and from nature than it all started, you know. So we are not participating to the gifts of nature, we have to exploit it. And the same way, we are not participating, you know, we are not connected to a female body who is giving birth to a child, so gifting actually life to the world. And all the paradigm shifted to the market until now. Today, we have neoliberalism that considers all the world as a marketplace. So today, it is really even harder to engage in a conversation with younger people about what is happening. So it's somehow you can't even, you know, warn them, saying, look, well, prepare yourself, inform yourself. There are data, there are other ways, you have choices. But if you live in all the story that is told by neoliberalism, you will have, you know, a disappointment.
Thanks, Elena. Chato, do you have some words that you'd like to offer to that very large question.
Yes, yes, very, very few. I was asking myself, and this is a question that probably we have to ask ourselves as well. Are migrant to mothers, the migration of migrant mothers a no-win situation, or is it a win situation? Is it a win-win? I really don't know the answer, because if there are 131 million women migrants, and majority of these are women, even daughters, or and the policies are so anti-migrants in many countries, it's a very difficult situation we're living in right now. And what I wanted to say is that I'm not supposed to be lecturing here, but my main objective, and I really thank Jen for bringing me in. Thank you for your friendship, and working with you is really just wonderful, because that's where I learned majority of what I'm doing now. Is that we really have to, at the local level, at university level, wherever you are, wherever you work, is to be aware that the migrant women are 151 million, and that migrant women are away from their children. Probably we don't even know that we have domestic workers in our homes, and we're not really understanding, what their situation is, except that you pay them or you give them the thing. But I think we have, and there is a lack of actually recognition on the contribution of women migrants. Majority of the papers I have read are from the United Nations, which is actually driving remittances, to replace the ODAs, the development funds, supposed to be, they wanted to use, they've been wanting to use the remittances of the migrants for development of their countries of origin. So that has become also our responsibility. These are all questions that we need to answer. Jan, I really would like to know face-to-face talk with you, because this is a big issue. This is a big issue. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Charito. I think this is, the two talks together have pointed out how, as a culture, as a whole, how the role of mother has been so diminished, that if we can uplift the notion of what it means to mother, and for healthy mothering, if we understand what it means to be human, a human mother, we would make different choices. And that is what the maternal gift economy and the theory is really about, is to see this underlying fabric that's there. It's not acknowledged. We even talk about it as unpaid work. But if we didn't do the work that was unpaid, we couldn't survive. Babies would not be raised up. We wouldn't have the next generation. So this is the challenge that we have, to actually lifting this level of consciousness, this veil that seems to be lifted in the language, so that we keep going back to money and remittances and additional burdens on mothers who've been taken away from their own children to care for other children, to be paid so the money can be sent back to their own children. There's something insane about this whole way that this flow is working. So we need to begin to think about, what does it mean to raise healthy children again? And what's that natural flow? Because that's the maternal gift economy in its embodiment, at its most fundamental level. And that scales up to everything that we have in all of our relations. So Jen, I don't know if you have some last closing words that you'd like to offer before we actually close the session.
I'd just like to pick up on what Chato said at the end, which is that that the United Nations and the various nations are trying to use the remittances of the immigrants to pay for the development that those countries in the United Nations should have been paying for. And that is just one more example of how our capitalist patriarchy rips off women and workers in general, and people who are in some ways coming from vulnerable positions. So that's, we need to realize what a really exploitative, terrible system we're trying to change.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Just a little bit of housekeeping. There have been some things put into the chat. So if you want to save the chat, you can. At the bottom of the screen to the right of your name are 3 little dots. And if you click on that, it will say save, and it will save these comments and the links to your own computer, and you can find them later on. I would like to thank Elena and Chato, or Charito, her formal name. I call her Chato, and most of us do. And Genevieve for your words today, very powerful and dynamic insight into places that we normally don't journey unless you're in that field, but critical to what it means to actually continue civilization itself. Humans could not exist in this day without the immigrants, because the market system is based on that. And this is what we want to do, is crack that market open so that the gift economy can flourish. I want to thank Jen for being with us, Diane for the technical support, Liliana and Judith for your questions. And I want to encourage you to see us again in 2 weeks, April 24th, for our 11th Salon with Kumba Touré from, is she from Ghana, Jen? Kumba, I think she's
from Senegal, but
she's in Senegal. Okay, and Medea Benjamin, who is one of the co-founders of Code Pink. So they'll be with us in 2 weeks. Today's recording will be up at our website, the Maternal Gift Economy Movement.org. If you want to be notified and be put on a mailing list so that you are get notifications of our upcoming salons and events at the Maternal Gift Economy Movement.org, you have to sign up there specifically. There are laws in different parts of the world that won't allow us to gather your email addresses to send out notices beyond just this event. So those of you who are who have signed up for this event will get a notice that tells you of the recording, and it will remind you of the next salon. But if you want to stay connected to us, please do sign up for our email. And if you have any questions and specifically comments about what you've heard or things that you'd like to know more about the gift economy, please let us know. And you can send them to us at the maternalgifteconomy@gmail.com, and we'll try to respond to you and send them on to our speakers. We've enjoyed our time together, and we want to thank you so much for being with us. Please, everyone, be well, stay safe, be kind to one another, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you all so much, very much for being with us. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.